Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Jones. Thank you, and welcome to interCHANGE. Thank you so very much for joining us. Important and interesting stuff to talk about again this week, as usual. Is the legislation which would lead to construction of a giant mine in northern Wisconsin dead, or will the Republicans be able to find one lawmaker to flip-flop in the next few days? We'll talk about the Madison judge who handed down a ruling which puts a temporary hold on the voter ID law. And we'll talk about efforts by the Milwaukee public school system to address the tragic violence which has led to the deaths of 4 MPS kids in the past few months. All right, let me introduce everybody. Everybody knows longtime newspaper columnist Joel McNally.
Everybody.
And everybody knows Kevin Fischer, former broadcast journalist, political analyst, and oftentimes a fill-in host over on WISN Talk Radio.
Or not.
Now, you all know Denise. She's the community and public relations professional that joins us every week.
I'm like Cher, I have only one name.
And, of course, Gerard Randall, education consultant and local job creation expert. Rick Horowitz and Denise Callaway will be along with commentary at the end of this show. All right. Since the legislation which would have cleared the way for a giant iron ore mine in northern Wisconsin failed to pass by just one single vote the other day, most people assume the matter is dead. That's what the media says. Even though the president of the company that was going to build the mine said it's obvious Wisconsin doesn't welcome mining, you have to wonder if in the next few days, while the legislature is still in session, the matter might come up again. Or maybe if there's a special session called in to deal with this one issue, maybe just one lawmaker will flip-flop.
Any of those scenarios are possibilities. The legislature still has some time to get it done in this session, especially given there was one vote that they had to entice over to support it. And they had opportunities with some of the more moderate Democratic senators that represented either areas of the state where mining was important, Senator Jauch, for example, or they represented areas in the city of Milwaukee where manufacturing of mining equipment is important, people like Senator Carpenter. If it had been a situation where we had Senator Plailey in the Senate still, they might have been able to pick up that one extra vote. But that wasn't the case. And so I think they're still trying to work at convincing one additional senator to vote for the bill and then move it forward in this session. The governor believes that if that doesn't happen, he's going to be doggedly determined to get this bill passed and may call for a special session just to keep the heat on the 17 that did not support the legislation, and as a result created a missed opportunity for jobs to be additionally created in this state.
Denise, would you be completely shocked if all of a sudden next Tuesday it comes up for a vote again and one guy flips?
Well, I got to tell you, nothing would completely shock me about this particular legislature. But the sad thing about it is there was an opportunity for weeks for this bill to be passed, for these jobs to be coming from the state to the state, and that would have been if Republicans would have been willing to make some compromises along the way. There's no reason why this bill shouldn't be sitting on the governor's desk right now, except that the Republicans did not want to compromise. That's why we don't have this bill now becoming law with an opportunity for jobs, if that's what people wanted. So let's not place the blame on one senator. Let's not place the blame totally on Democrats who didn't vote to support it. If there would have been some changes to this bill that would have addressed 2 key issues, the ability for citizens to contest and to challenge a permit if it were issued, and some strengthening of environmental legislation as it was in this particular bill, the bill would have passed. So when we take a look at what could happen, anything's possible, but we would need to be in this situation if there would have been the willing for some compromise so those jobs could have come here.
Now, Kevin, it wasn't that long ago, and we all remember the situation. Everybody said, oh, no Miller Park, it's dead, it's dead, it's dead. And then our friend George, late at night, boom, flip.
And I, as you know, worked up there for years in the legislature. And
you were
that
just
last
when you
week,
started working.
That last week is mad, frenetic, chaotic, with this rush to get bills passed. However, in this case, I think it's unlikely because a major company with this kind of investment doesn't play games. When it says, look, there's too much uncertainty, we've been through this process, and we've had it, we're out. They mean business. I don't think they're going to come back to the table. And Denise, you couldn't be more wrong about the Republicans not wanting to compromise. A year ago, when the initial negotiations began, even back then, GTAC compromised. Then it went to the state assembly, and the assembly bill that was changed. There was compromise. Then it went to the Joint Finance Committee. There was compromise. There were many changes made, and not by Senator Schultz or the 16 Senate Democrats. Then it went to the state Senate, and Republicans made.
They're not in the majority. They couldn't compromise.
Republicans made changes. There were well over 24 changes, and finally the company said, "Look, we can't have this. We have to have certainty of what this bill is going to be." And we weren't even talking about building a mine. We're talking about streamlining the permit process for the mine, and we can't even get that done. Well, I think the Democrats, from a political standpoint, just shot themselves in the you-know-what, because they took their major talking point, and that is jobs, and they blew it up. It's gone now, because what are they going to campaign on the rest of the year? Jobs. They had a chance to create well over 2,000 well-paying jobs, 85 grand a year, $1.5 billion investment, and they put special interests who are running that party now. It's sad, I'm sad to say, public sector unions are running that party. Special interests are running that party. Extreme environmentalists. They don't care about jobs. All they wanted to do was to prevent Scott Walker from having a victory.
It's so interesting that you said what you just said, which was that there was this compromise, but then not legislators who said it was enough. The company said it didn't want any more. Any more changes.
Investment. They're a major player at the table.
I don't elect them, though, to make laws in the state. I elect the legislators, so I really don't care whether or not the company said it didn't want any more compromise.
They're the job creators. They have a major say.
But they're not our elected officials. They don't make law.
And
our
again,
legislators.
I repeat, Denise,
our legislators.
But then again, you don't.
I want to respond to that. No, let me respond to that. Yeah, you're right. The elected officials make the decisions on the floor of the Senate and the Assembly, and those are the people that made these dozens and dozens of changes.
No, but of course,
they aren't.
They've changed the bill many times.
If a company is going to make a $1.5 billion investment, don't you want the company's input in what the legislation is going to look like?
I don't want the company writing the damn bill, which is what happened in this case. And when you say there was compromise, you skip that part where it went to the state Senate, and the state Senate committee, headed by a Republican, said the Assembly bill gives too much away to the company. We're going to have to work a better bill to get it past the Senate. And the Republican Party shut it down and took it away from his committee. So that could not be improved. This company, he says the company doesn't play games. That's all they've done is play games. They came up with, they wrote this bill, handed it to the legislators who are going to give them anything they want. And then, when it doesn't get passed that way, they then announce publicly, well, okay, if you're not going to pass the bill, if you're not going to pass the bill,
dozens and dozens of changes.
If you're not going to minor changes that didn't change the two significant things, which is environmental protection and a contested hearing where the company officials actually have to be questioned in an adversary hearing under oath, which is the only time you get the truth about what the company's going to do.
Tell that to the people up Northwest who are unemployed right now.
The people up Northwest,
up north.
the people up north that you're talking about, Republicans up north, I've read quotes from them. They care about the environment. They care about mining, yes, but they don't want this bill because this bill takes too many protections off.
Because it would make Scott Walker look good.
These are Republicans I'm talking about from the Northwest.
Had more input rather than the company writing the bill and handing it off.
The company is going to create the jobs, and if you don't play ball with them, guess what? They go home and we lose everything.
All right, next topic. Let's talk for just a few minutes about the Madison Circuit Court judge who issued a temporary restraining order the other day that appears to put the law which requires you to show an ID when you vote on hold, at least for the time being. Then it comes out that he's an anti-Scott Walker judge who signed the petition to force Walker into a recall election. But doesn't a judge have the right to sign a petition like anybody else?
He sure does. He's a citizen. He has opinions. He votes in elections. He votes, a judge has people come before him in court every single day that he doesn't necessarily like personally or identify with personally. His job is to enforce the law. And this whole thing about some petition is really just a sideshow. The important thing that happened is this judge who has issued this injunction is on the basis of 220,000 people in this state who are going to be disenfranchised by that law. People who don't have this ID, the most strict ID requirement in the history of America, right here in Wisconsin. And, you know, he said you can't disenfranchise 220,000 people in Wisconsin.
But should he have at least told the lawyers on each side, I signed this
There's
petition?
Oh, my
a clear
goodness, yes.
conflict of interest.
Oh, my God.
Because what this judge, what came before this judge was
The law.
was a law that he had already determined he didn't like because he didn't like the personalities that were involved. The governor,
that?
the governor,
He didn't
no, he
say that.
didn't have to.
No, he didn't
The
say
governor,
that.
the governor was a party to the suit.
He based it on
The
the
governor
evidence
was
of
a
who was
party
being
to the suit.
debated.
The governor was a party to the suit that he was to render a judgment on, and he'd made the decision by signing the recall petition that he didn't like the governor, or he didn't like the governor's policies. So he had already laid
what a
bare.
democracy to actually
well,
occur.
no, that he can vote.
That's not.
That's
he can sign petitions
that's
all day
discreet.
long.
The petition signing was very public, and that he didn't disclose until someone else had found it. That being said, there was the conflict of interest. At the end of the day, I think what's going to ultimately happen is this case will be moved to another judge.
He was appointed by Tommy Thompson.
It doesn't make any
Doesn't
difference.
matter what he,
Well,
what he did was wrong. It's wrong.
If that's the case, do we expect judges, when they sign nomination papers then for different politicians, if there are cases that appear before them to say, you know, I probably shouldn't hear this case because I signed your nomination paper.
There are other pieces, though, that judges are not permitted to do, like endorse candidates
That's right.
or contribute money to their campaigns.
He didn't do
so
either
signing,
one of those.
so signing a
He didn't
nomination
do either one of
paper.
those.
Signing a recall petition
is
is pretty
very
darn
different.
close to
That's
an
right.
endorsement.
It is
which
not.
is-
Wait,
which
no,
is-
no more
which is
so. No more
prevented
so
under
than the
federal
nomination
law.
paper is.
Look.
No more so than the nomination papers are.
Look, you know, if it's okay that he signed the petition, that's fine. It may not be illegal, but it certainly is unethical.
He should have
And
passed
you
on the
have,
case.
you have, as a sitting judge, when a case comes before you, you have the obligation to be professional, ethical, and honest.
So
now the left is very hypocritical.
Maybe like for the Supreme Court, for example, if you have a case that comes before you where someone who's provided free legal advice for you and you don't recuse
Well, I'm
yourself,
glad you bring that up, Denise.
you got to decide which way you want
I'm
it.
glad
you
you
can't
bring
have it
that up
both
because
ways.
because you
can't
prove
have it
once
both
again
ways.
how hypocritical the left is.
Oh.
For months we hear about Supreme Court Justice Gableman needs to recuse himself because there's this conflict of interest. But now this lefty Dane County Court judge, it's okay.
So
it's all right.
Are you
So
saying
you're saying that
needs
Gableman
to
should
recuse
recuse
No, that's
himself?
not what I'm saying. I'm
Then
saying
how are
the
you
left
how
is
can you
saying
say
that,
about him?
but now it's hypocritical for you guys to say
No,
that what
it's
this
not.
Dane County
This
judge did.
The Supreme Court judge received clear benefits from having Michael Best.
Financial benefits.
Financial
Discussing the Dane
benefits.
County judge and
what
photo
I'm
ID.
discussing, we're discussing is the fact that you're saying that this judge, by his actions, had a clear conflict of interest.
Yes, he did.
But you won't step up and say. You will not step up and say that Judge Gableman,
I'm
who
saying
received,
you should say that
Judge,
about the
I know
Dane
you don't.
County
I know you
judge.
keep interrupting me because you don't want me to say this because it makes perfect sense. But you're saying
you're
that
actually
Judge
hurting your own
Gableman,
cause,
however,
Denise.
does not have a conflict of interest when he received goods and services of value for Michael Best
Of
Region.
enormous
When-
value.
You know what
The
needs to
reality is
happen?
people-
But when we're-
He's
when-
right.
when word
This
leaks
needs to be
out-
stayed. Another judge has to come in.
Another
and
picket line.
when all is said and done, down the road, another judge or another panel is going to find the photo ID is legal and
No, they're not.
constitutional.
In reality, though,
I predict
when
not.
word leaks out that a Dane County judge signed a recall petition against Walker, he pretty much just guaranteed his reelection in Dane County, didn't he?
He doesn't
Dane
have an
County.
opponent. He doesn't have an
Well,
opponent.
in this upcoming case, but you know, at the end of it all, in my view, he's still played a political game that was very dangerous with a piece of legislation that he was to pass on, that ultimately should have been decided with the utmost integrity and impartiality.
You know, I got to tell you, Gerard, I'm really tired of hearing Republicans talk about ethics when you know, and I don't know if Kevin knows, but you know The point to this photo ID law is to disenfranchise certain people.
Oh, absolutely not. No. I actually believe that this law.
To think that you believe what you're saying.
I do. I believe that this is the correct law to have.
Nonsense.
And I also, when I went to vote, no, that's not what it does. When I went to vote, there was absolutely no problem with my presenting my identification, signing my name, casting my ballot, and getting out.
You were one of the
in less than
220,000 people who don't have that identification.
But I can't believe that there's that many people in the state of Wisconsin. You can't survive without a photo ID.
I believe there are that many that don't have it. I don't believe it's an inconvenience
when you don't have a birth
right
certificate,
to go and get it.
When you don't have a birth certificate and you have to pay to get that.
No, they've paid the way in Milwaukee County and other counties. Yes, they have, to obtain your birth certificate for free.
Would you tell people who were born in Mississippi that? What's so easy about going to small towns in Mississippi where
you can go online right now and get your birth certificate in Mississippi?
If there is such a thing.
I've done searches on my relatives and gotten copies of their birth certificates.
You're justifying the unjustifiable.
That there is a key problem here in terms of putting barriers, significant barriers in the way of people who otherwise would have every right and be eligible to vote. And he said, I'm looking at the Constitution, and I don't think that falls in line with what the Constitution
He should have said, I signed a recall petition against
Ultimately, I think
but
even...
in the eyes
you don't have
of
to have
what's legal and
a law
right.
degree to know that he certainly was dishonest.
This is a big enough
I can
issue.
understand because of the facts that came out in this case, why you all are more than happy to talk about the judge, because the facts are troublesome for you. No, it's not.
Photo ID.
They're definitely not troublesome for me.
Oh, they are.
No, they're not. If they were troublesome, I'd admit they're troublesome.
You don't have to keep
what bothers me about all of this is that we are going to have an election that will pop up after this April election where photo ID will be in place. And because of the discombobulation, there are going to be far more hiccups that people are going to point to and say, it's ID that's the problem. It's not the fact that we could have had a much smoother
All over this country, the numbers that are being disenfranchised are being documented. And I've heard numbers as high as 5 million from a law school at NYU. When those kinds of figures go to the U.S. Supreme Court, even run by the conservative majority that it is,
they will get
I predict that these photo IDs will be thrown out.
All right, next topic. This weekend, the Milwaukee Public Schools Administration will hold a second town hall type meeting to address the street violence which has taken the lives of 4 MPS students in the past few months. The first meeting was extremely well attended with a lot of sincere emotions and suggestions. But can a school district do anything that the city and the police department can't do or isn't doing, Denise?
Well, we can't do it as a district all by ourselves, which is why we had this community meeting. So yes, we had teachers and students and principals there, but we also had aldermen. We also had people from nonprofit organizations. The mayor and the police chief sent representatives and sent support. The governor's office called and indicated support for what was being done, because it's not MPS saying we need to do something, meaning just the district. It means we as a community need to be able to figure out ways in which we can reach out and help our kids. What happened to those 4 young men is just, it's horrific. As a parent, I can't imagine what their parents are feeling now, that loss, what their friends are feeling, how it's impacted that school. One school, Bradley Tech, had 2 of those 4 students who were murdered. I mean, that's what happened. These were young people as young as 16 years old who were murdered. What is wrong with us in our community where we can't find a way to work together, to band together, to figure out what needs to be done? So as a school district where we're privileged enough to have these children in our care, we feel that it's our responsibility to step forward and to bring everyone, to bring others into the discussion and to see some action take place.
But
because
if the city can't stop the violence, if the police department can't stop the violence, it may feel good for MPS to get everybody together, but can that stop the violence?
It's a partnership between almost everyone in this community. We all have a stake in it. I'll tell you, one of those things that troubled me last week, a mom who lost her 22-year-old son was prayed for in church. because she couldn't have the funeral for her son in church because of the threats to disrupt that funeral. And they looked at every possible way they could to have a send-off for this young man without any problems. And they just couldn't get it done because it was so nerve-wracking to the family. These problems that come into the schools wait for them when they cross the threshold going in, and they are there for them when they cross the threshold coming out. In many instances, the only safe harbor for them is in school. But that's only for a limited part of the day. The schools, for the most part, don't create the problems, and yet they're expected to solve the problem. And they're expected to almost solve the problem unilaterally. That cannot be done. So until there's a concerted effort to address the social issues that are leading many of our kids to be underachievers, we did some statistics that showed, for example, or we reviewed some statistics that showed the reading scores for those who are poor children are much lower than the reading scores for the same ethnic group that is in the middle class or has more means to support their families. These things ought to be troubling to this community, so much to the point that we should have gotten engaged in that before lives were lost. And unfortunately, we had to wait for the superintendent to make this urgent plea for people to come together and figure out how do we get our arms around this collectively. Not how does MPS do it, not how does the city do it, but how do we do it, because it's not going to stop just because those kids walk into an MPS building.
It's mission impossible for a school system, any kind, to try to deal with this problem if, as we've mentioned here, that problem is just walking through the door. It starts at home. If there's no instruction on how to respect life, how to have a total regard for human life, then you can't expect miracles from people within MPS buildings to deal with these kids. And I wish there was more of an outcry from the mayor's office, from the local alderman. I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
And seminars, community meetings, candlelight vigils, they're not going to get the job done. I think it starts at home, and then also swift and really tough punishments for these violent people. Get them out of our schools so that the kids who want to be there, who want a safe environment, who want to learn can.
There's plenty of that.
Only 1 minute. Milwaukee can't be that much different than Oakland, Detroit, so many other big cities.
But that doesn't mean it's any less horrific. And this isn't all hands on deck kind of issue. Mm-hmm. I think just the thing is, you can say it's the family's fault if you want to, and you can blame the victims if you want to, but we know that there are people who grow up without the support that we've had in our families and without that kind of support around them. And something has to be done for those people. When it's not there, you can't just point fingers and say it's not there. You have to provide some of that support for children who are growing up without it.
All right, we switched gears. Let's turn to the presidential race for just a minute. It was a very busy week for the Republican contenders. Lots of delegates up for grabs and lots of spinning afterwards. Writing consultant and commentator Rick Horowitz was watching every single minute of it. In fact, he may have stumbled across the GOP frontrunner's very own closed-circuit TV network. Rick.
Good morning, everyone. Our great staff, you terrific volunteers. Time for our weekly upbeat update from right here in Boston. As Romney 2012's chief morale officer, I'm really excited to bring you up to speed about Mitt's march to the nomination. As you know, we had a great Super Tuesday, a bunch of big wins, a couple of close calls, a couple of setbacks, certainly nothing to worry about. Now we've crunched the latest numbers, and our message this week is simple. Mitt is inevitable. That's right, it would take an act of God to stop us. So none of this long slog talk, okay? None of this death march talk? Great. Hey, we've got the best candidate with the best experience and the best policies to take on the issues people really care about. And if that's not enough, we've also got a super PAC that, I've heard that there's an independent super PAC that's going to keep spending tens of millions of dollars ripping the flesh off of anyone who threatens our lead. So we feel good. And we're keeping our eye on the ball. That's the important thing. Mitt's not wasting time talking about, Rush Limbaugh or something. Rush can say whatever vile things he wants to about, not that Mitt thinks Rush was saying vile things, not that Mitt agrees with what, anyway, those are just distractions. Just keep your eye on the ball. It's like he said himself on Tuesday night. Tomorrow we wake up and we start again. And the next day we'll do the same. And so we'll go, day by day, step by step, door by door, heart to heart. Inspiring, isn't it? That's why we're already printing up a brand new line of bumper stickers, our Inevitability series, so you can show everyone exactly how you feel about our guy. There's Romney, might as well. And sure, why not? And my favorite, Mitt, it's the math. And don't forget T-shirts. We're thinking of putting these great big letters and a big exclamation point right across the front like a giant poster. And it says, Mitt will do it. And if it doesn't fit, we'll just go with Mitt will do. See you next week.
Well, thanks, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Stay warm. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.